Hi guys. Now I did get an email recently, I think it was an email or a comment, basically saying, you talk about sherry and vermouth and just fortified wine in general so much, but you haven't yet mentioned Madeira. What's that about? So I am here to rectify that situation. Madeira is actually something that I use a lot. I really enjoy using it in cocktails, and it's actually kind of my go-to after dinner drink. So let's have a little chat through what Madeira is, some different styles, and I'll have a little tasting because as always I'm selfless and will taste through so that I can describe to you the different flavor profiles that you would be looking for in certain bottles of Madeira. So let's get started. Madeira is named for the island of Madeira, so it belongs to Portugal, little kind of rocky outcrop in the Atlantic Ocean. And the general vibe with it, as with a lot of things from that time, was that it was a bit of a happy accident. So it was wine that would be fortified so that it would actually survive trips overseas. You'd be stuck into barrels and shipped off to various colonies and things around the world. But what they actually noticed is that while it was on the ship, because it was passing through such massive temperature changes, you'd be going to the tropics and the Caribbean, be really hot, and then it would be kind of cooled down again out at sea and then hot again and whatever. Similar to certain styles of sherry, it's kind of aged oxidatively as well, which means that they do allow the oxygen to get in there and do its thing. So kind of not as clean and crisp as I guess some, or as like a more dry, like a Fino or a Manzanilla, which is deliberately protected from oxygen, but more similar in style to sort of an Oloroso or that kind of thing. And then you do pick the grapes for Madeira really nice and early, so it actually still has good acid. So whereas something like a Pedro Jimenez sherry is really thick and syrupy and, don't get me wrong, delicious and very indulgent, some of these are actually almost close to dry, ranging through to quite sweet, but still with a bit of an acid line. And that's why it's actually my kind of personal favorite after dinner sort of dessert wine, because it does have that nice balance to it. You might have heard it gets used a lot in cooking, so definitely kind of some cheaper Madeiras make some banging sauces and things out there, but your more kind of high-end stuff is also really delicious just to sip neat. And then also, as I said, using it in cocktails definitely comes from that same era, where it would be put into cobblers. So rather than a sherry cobbler, try a Madeira cobbler. Punches, we actually just filmed a little punch special where we did the big punch bowl and everything, so if you haven't seen that yet, then you should definitely have a look. But we use some Madeira in there as well. Yeah, so that's kind of the backstory and what Madeira is. So let's do a little bit of tasting. Now there's two sort of I guess not styles, but almost categories of Madeira. So you get blends, which are, again, same as almost with blended whiskey or something, generally a little bit more of an entry level part of the category. And that will be a blend of different grape varietals, usually aged for a while, but not super long. So something like the Rainwater is just like a really fresh and fruity blend, aged for about a minimum of 3 years. Some of the other ones that I have here so this one is a medium dry, 5 years, and this one's actually a dry one, which is 5 years old as well. So these ones will have their, the age statement on it and really be labeled more by their flavor profile. And then you also have these guys, which are single varietals. So these ones actually say what the grape is that they're made, that they're actually made from, and then generally will have, again, age statements on there. So you've got your Surcio, your Verde, and your Voile. So I'm quite excited actually. I haven't cracked into the 15-year-old of this one yet, but I've got them kind of arranged here from, I guess, driest and brightest to sort of your richest. So Surcio is almost more aperitif style through to something a little bit more desserty here. So I don't think we have to try all of the blends because they all kind of do roughly the same thing, obviously with this one just being a little bit drier. So we're gonna go with our little Enrique and Enrique Finest medium dry, 5 years old. So you can see from pouring, it's not, it's not very viscous. Like it actually does kind of pour a little bit more like actual wine, maybe a little bit thicker, but it's definitely not syrupy by any means. And a very winey nose. So quite a lot of, kind of bright citrus notes. I know it sounds silly, but it does actually smell quite grapey, like really ripe green grapes. You've got a little bit of honey coming through there as well, and kind of a little bit of spice, like definitely a bit of warmer spice, like a cinnamon or nutmeg type situation. So yeah, really quite juicy, quite ripe fruit, almost kind of apricot-y up front. Well, a fun little test, if you know, when I talk about acid or when you hear people talking about acid, if you're not sure what exactly that means, a good way of actually checking is when you drink something, if you tip your head down and saliva starts to pool, which is what's happening in my mouth just now, just to give you a really gross little insight there. That is like, that's what acid does. It stimulates your saliva. That's kind of why it's like literally mouth watering and keeps you coming back for more. So yeah, that definitely got my mouth watering there. So lots of good acid on it. And yeah, so a nice kind of like fruit sweetness, but definitely not sugary or syrupy. So yeah, a really nice kind of medium body and medium dry, as it says on the tin. So this one, I mean, you could definitely use it in cooking if you feel like it. It's probably, you know, a little bit more expensive than you might want to do that for, but also would be delicious. But I think really good in cocktails. I think actually even just like on the rocks with just some tonic, almost like a Porto Tonico, to kind of take another of Portugal's national drinks and stick something else in there. So nothing too complex, but very delicious. Then we're gonna go into our Surfside. So you can see, obviously this is a bit older, so 10 years old as opposed to 5 years. So definitely a little bit of a richer color happening there. It's actually quite a vibrant, almost orangey color. And I'm getting a bit more of those kind of woody, like buttery sort of notes that you get from oak. A little bit of vanilla and almost like a butterscotch kind of thing on the nose. But still really bright and fresh, very much golden raisins, but still with heaps of acid and citrus to keep it really lifted. So even though, again, there are some sweeter notes in there, it definitely doesn't really drink like a dessert wine. I'd probably have that alongside some kind of fish sort of starter, would be delicious. It would cut through something that's a little bit creamier as well, while having the body to stand up to it. So really delicious sipping one there. That's yeah, definitely one that I like to recommend for people if they're having something for dessert as well that's quite rich, like a little Portuguese tart, for example, which is all kind of custardy and creamy. Then something like that alongside it is perfect. Now we're gonna go your Verde. It's an LH, so I think it's kind of a Y sound, but I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong. This one is a little bit older again, so 15 years. And this is like, I'm almost getting into, almost smells kind of whiskey-ish, definitely has a lot of similar notes to it. Or brandy, that kind of vibe, like quite, yeah, like fruity but big, like it's jumping out the glass, and a lot of spice. It's yum, actually, I hadn't tried this one. It's quite a bit more raisiny and rich, a bit more desserty, but not, you know, not mouth coating. I know a lot of people don't really like dessert wine for that reason. They just feel it sort of gets stuck to your mouth and you can't get rid of it. Whereas this, yeah, is still really kind of got a good driving force of acid. Delicious. Now, last but not least, we're gonna go our Wow. Fun to say, fun to drink. So you can see again, kind of a darker color on this one, even though it's a little bit younger than the Verde. It's actually just a bit of a darker kind of brown there. So really the main difference there is the texture. This one is a lot more viscous in your mouth. It's got really good kind of nutty and dried fruit notes. But you're kind of losing some of those more brighter citrusy ones that you saw in, for instance, the Surfside. So definitely well more into proper kind of dessert wine territory here. Interesting fact, the treatment that they do now with the heat to sort of replicate that, you know, the temperature fluctuation that happened on voyages. Now they obviously just do that kind of automatically, or you know, using machines and things rather than an actual ship. But that does, it basically preserves the wine. which is pretty cool. So Madeira is, you know, you can see those old dusty bottles that might have been lost from a shipwreck a million years ago or whatever. Those are actually generally all actually quite drinkable. Because it's kind of crazy. The winemakers for Madeira are basically doing what all other winemakers try not to do, which is just expose their wine to the elements. And so it actually becomes a really robust wine by consequence of that. So if you ever do get the opportunity to try some Madeira from, you know, the early 1900s, then please jump on it. Or if you have, then please let me know how it was. And hopefully that's given you a little introduction. I am going to be doing a Madeira cocktail now, or filming it. So make sure that you've liked and subscribed so that you can see when that comes out and get mixing Madeira, not just for cooking. So now you know.